So Donald Trump and the White House are in full panic mode today as they're expecting a hot inflation report to come out tomorrow. Then you got scandals, incompetent people, and sagging in the polls, and you got recipe for disaster. Let me give you the updates and the latest, and let's just jump right in. So this is the headlines today. CPI report, right? Inflation. June inflation data projected to show an uptick because of tariffs, and that's what the White House is panicking about. And you've got the whole Epstein scandal thing, which keeps getting worse. This is the headlines today also. DOJ urges Supreme Court to turn away Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. And effectively, I think the Trump people are trying to keep her quiet. They don't want anything to get out about their dear leader or any of their dear leader's friends. That's what it looks like to me. I think it's pretty obvious. And so what they're doing then is like, hey, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about something else. And the people are like, no, tell me what's going on. Why don't you release the files and the Epstein stuff? So if there's any latest on that, I'll let you know. But at the moment, it looks like they're trying to keep people quiet, is what it looks like to me. The White House today, they were also tweeting out this, retweeting from Homeland Security. This is just a few hours ago. It says, remember your homeland's heritage, new life in a new land. Okay. And if you look at this picture and if you know American history, you'll understand the problem with this. And I'll tell you the truth. The Trump people, they don't want you to have an education. They don't want you to know history. And they just want to basically gaslight you and put out propaganda. So this kind of picture, just objectively what it is, it's a white couple, right? Mom and a dad holding a white baby. And they're in colony wagons, right? So the idea is that, USA is a land for these kind of people. No one else lived on the land at the time. That's what sort of these images suggest. And it's just all for that kind of person, right? So if you're black or brown or Native American, right, red, you're not included in these types of images. You guys understand? And this is sort of why it's problematic to tweet this stuff out. If you don't know history and you think, oh, yes, the land belonged to them, but most people, this is why you want to teach American history. Most people want to learn the truth about this stuff. When the settlers arrived, they weren't the only people there. There were people there before, the Native Americans, and I want to make sure that's really clear. And the Trump people, what they say, well, we're not really against immigrants. We actually want a certain kind of immigrant. So now they're putting out pictures of Melania Trump, right? Trump's third wife. She's from Europe. She says she is the moment. They also want to distract you with ice cream. No, for real. And so I'm just going over what the White House is talking about today. So don't talk about scandals with the Epstein stuff. Don't talk about high inflation. Talk about ice cream. For real. Today I joined Secretary Rollins and Secretary Kennedy to celebrate commitments from dairy FDA, I guess, or it's dairy FA companies to remove artificial food colorings from more than 90 million gallons of ice cream annually. So we're talking about ice cream today. Yes, ice cream for everyone. And then they all want you to buy a Ford. So seriously, America first, and then they're talking about Ford over Toyota. That's what the White House is doing. They don't want you to talk about the sagging poll numbers. So this is where we're at. And the poll data is interesting because this is an average. So disapprove at 52, approve at 44. That's an average. If you want to look at individual polls, he's sinking though. That's the key. YouGov poll just came out down 17. So it's disapproval at 56, approval at 39. You have another one, Eklund Insights, it has him at 53 disapprove, 45 approve. I mean, he's underwater on all of these pretty much. The only one, which I think is the outlier, and that might be a Republican one, RNG, they're saying he's at approve at 50, disapprove at 47, but I would take that one with a grain of salt when all the other polls are basically having him underwater. But this is where it's at. And then essentially what they want to do is also keep you uneducated. And so this was actually a major thing today that came out from the Supreme Court. It says Supreme Court allows deep layoffs at Education Department for now. I'm sure there's going to be a fight over this. I do want to read over this one because my goal, guys, I was a professor for about 10 years, is just to keep you educated. That's honestly, it's what I want to do. I think it's the biggest solution to almost every problem out there is have more educated population to understand the world, to offer solutions to solve problems. And I want your kids to be educated. The Trump people are gonna have a different point of view on that kind of stuff. I get it. They want to sort of misrepresent history, and they want you thinking about ice cream. For real, that was the thing today, or whatever dress that Melania is wearing. But this is actually an important thing. Trump trying to dismantle education. There's going to be a fight, but I do want to read what the Supreme Court said today. So it says, a divided Supreme Court on Monday cleared the way for Trump administration to sharply shrink Education Department, one of the cornerstones of President's efforts to radically downsize the federal government, right? So he wants to fire all these people in the federal government. The justices lifted a temporary lower court ruling that prevented Trump officials from slashing more than a third of the department's more than 4,100 workers. So I guess they want to, fire 33%, right? A third of the people, 1 out of 3, and shifting some of its functions to states and other agencies as litigation over the cuts plays out in the lower court. So if you understand this immediate effect, the same thing with the hospitals or rural communities, they're going to get hit hard, right? So basically, MAGA, the red states, the ones they're struggling, they're going to get hard by this stuff, and that's the plan for the Trumps, right? Cut your health care, cut your food, cut your red states. And I don't want to mean it doesn't affect blue states. It will, but I'm saying it's going to disproportionately affect a lot of red states of this kind of stuff, because the way the system works is, big states like California, New York pay a lot more than say they take in than say the red states. Here's another example here, more. It says, as is common with cases decided on the emergency docket, the majority did not explain its rationale for the decision. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote a scathing dissent that was joined by the court's 2 other liberals, labeling the ruling, quote, indefensible and a major expansion of presidential power. Here's another quote. When the executive publicly announces its intent to break the law and then executes on that promise, it is the judiciary's duty to check that lawlessness, not expedite it. I mean, this is sort of more Supreme Court saying, basically Trump's, trying to break the law, wants a lawless land, etc. And this is why I go over this stuff. I think this is really important. And again, I'm for education. I want more education for people, not less. It also says here, she added that the court, quote, hands the executive power, the power to repeal statutes by firing all those necessary to carry them out, right? And that's been a big theme of the Trump people. Is they always complain about rules and laws and regulations, and their solution is just fire everyone, right? So that the wealthy and the powerful and the billionaires like the Elon Musk can come and poison your air, poison your water, put you in dangerous vehicles, take away your jobs with AI, right? That's what Trump wants to do. Fire all the people. That's their plan. I want to make sure it's really clear, guys, when we go over this stuff, and they want you to keep going educated. And you should be aware of these things. And I know it's frustrating. You talk to MAGA people and they want to, live in their little bubble. I get that. I get it more, but that's not the majority of people. And I'm willing to bet the majority of people actually want a better future for their kids. So for me, education is really important. The majority is either willfully blind to the implications of its ruling or naive. But either way, the threat to our Constitution's separation of powers is grave. And usually you don't see this really strong language for Sotomayor. That's what I'm talking about with you. Because it's not just, say, Department of Education. They can do these things in several departments where basically cut things that people need and keep our system going. More. The sweeping cuts will hit some offices particularly hard as the administration works to shrink the agency's impact. They include the Office for Civil Rights. That's what they want to cut, which will lose about half its staff and 7 of its regional offices, though it faces deep backlog of cases. It also includes a federal student aid office charged with overseeing these services and contractors that power the student loan program. So harder to get money to go to college and easier to violate people's civil rights. Essentially the Trump way. They also want this. Another office that will be hit hard is the Institute of Educational Sciences, which until this year sponsored a wide swath of research into best practices, like helping teachers do better at their jobs, right? That's what this is all about. But Trump wants to cut that stuff, right? Screw teachers. Who needs teachers, right? And actually, it's been floated by Musk that he wants to go to hey, just have one AI, teach all schools, because why do we need teachers when we have AI? That's their plan. It is a ridiculous plan, but these sort of plans are put into place by people who don't understand education, or if they do, they just don't want it for you. It is shameful what the Trump people are doing. The office also runs the National Assessment of Educational Progress, sometimes called the Nation's Report Card, which has been cut back. So the reason this office would be important for them to cut is then states, say in the MAGA red states who have poor education, that's just the reality, they don't want any information to get out on that, right? So they don't want to improve the work of teachers, and they don't want you to know like how badly some states are doing compared to others. So the show will still continue to go on, but the way this game is played is the people who are most vulnerable are going to get hurt the most, unfortunately. So other things like, for example, it says states sue to force feds to release 7 billion in education funding. It targets all kinds of things. Oftentimes, it'll be things like if you have special ed teachers in your school, which many schools can't afford that kind of thing, and it's something very needed. If you ever had a friend or family who has a special needs child, you know it's really expensive to take care of, and the schools need to hire staff that are capable of handling that kind of thing. That kind of stuff will be the first to go. Other things will, food programs for kids and that stuff usually is on the chopping block also. This still talks about a little bit more. It says a group of 24 states, so many states are fighting back. And the District of Columbia sued the Trump administration Monday over its withholding of nearly 7 billion in education funding for after-school care, English language learning, teacher training, and other programs, asking a federal judge to force the federal government to release the money. And then you have this also really disturbing story, if it's not disturbing enough, but any one of these are really bad. This one is basically it sounds like they just want to detain people whenever they want and for as long as they want. ICE declares that millions of undocumented immigrants ineligible for bond hearings, and it was talking like months or years possibly. For example, this is what it says. In a July 8th memo, Todd M. Lyons, acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, so ICE, told officers that such immigrants should be detained for, quote, the duration of their removal proceedings, which can take months or years. Okay. Lawyers say the policy will apply to millions of immigrants who crossed the US-Mexico border over the past few decades, including under Biden. And remember, Trump also wants to strip citizenship of people, as he was threatening and looking at, say, the comedian Rosie O'Donnell, or the candidate for New York City mayor, Zohran Mandami. So, if you put all this stuff together, right, Trump doesn't want you to talk about rising costs and inflation, doesn't want you to talk about the Epstein thing. He wants you thinking about ice cream, thinking about, hey, look at the colonial days when the white people came and took all the land. Oh, wow, gee, that's what we got to think about. And, he doesn't want you to have any education to understand any of this stuff. And then he wants to hide data on said things and make it so that, ICE can just come arrest you and hold you forever. So I know this isn't happy topics to talk about this stuff, but I want you to be educated. That's why I do this on a daily basis with you guys. And I go through everything I possibly can so that you're informed. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.